Hey again. This is another episode of Be Here with Matt. And this is just a little background on where I'm coming from and a really short uh, bullet point of the plan, as much as there is a plan. Because it's very, very limited in scope. Um, so, where I've come from, I grew up in a very lower, maybe even lower class family, or maybe like upper lower class, lower middle class. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Um, but I grew up in a family that never really had much money, and dad tried. He did. I feel like he got a lot of the concepts, but was just too caught up in maybe his own emotional stuff, or I don't know. I don't really know all of his story, and that's not really the point of this video. Um, but basically, I grew up not being taught about money, and definitely didn't get taught about it in schools. Uh, Grew up just being taught that the only real option is to get a job, work hard, save for retirement, and then in maybe 20, 30, 40 years retire with enough savings to go and have fun for the last however many years of my life. um, that never really appealed to me, and I tried it for a while, hated it, and literally got so miserable that I uprooted my entire life and moved to Hawaii in less than a week. Um, like literally just emptied out an entire apartment, sold or gave away everything I had, packed a backpack and a suitcase, and was gone all within the span of a week. Um, and never really looked back. I got to Hawaii and had this silly idea that I could just hit the streets and again go looking for a job because it was all I knew. And the funny thing about Hawaii is no one really hires fresh off the boat. Like it's not a thing until you've been there for at least 6 months, until you have certain things like a local bank account, a PO box, things that show that you're committed to being there. No one really wants to hire you because the majority of people that end up there that think they're going to do that are gone within 3 weeks to a month. So, I went and I hit the streets and I literally asked every single store in town for a job or if they were hiring. None of them would touch me. And within a week, I had run out of cash. I was broke. Um, Staying at the hostel, even just buying food and cooking at the hostel, like that, that was it. That was all my money. So I ended up signing up for what's called WWOOF, WWOOF, Willing Workers on Organic Farms, and found a farm on the other side of the island, committed to it for 3 months, and started organic farming, which, I had some experience with from growing up as a kid. I volunteered at a farm and learned some things there with my grandmother and my aunt, but never really the nuts and bolts of it. And so I really, I hated it, but I also loved it. Like the whole being out and working in the fields on my hands and knees for 3 to 8 hours a day, depending on what we were doing. It was the most boring thing in the world at first. And I would take my headphones out with me and listen to music and just anything to help pass the time. After a while, I got to a point where there was this just peace. Like it was calm and it was nice and enjoyable to just go out and work. And I started bringing the music out less and less. Until I got to this place where like I craved it. Like I would be out there longer than I needed to be to keep up with the agreement, and maintain room and board there, and just enjoying it, taking care of the horse, weeding. Really didn't do much planting. It was really just a lot of weeding, taking care of the horse and compost, and harvesting. I wasn't there during the planting season, so that never happened. Um, but I really learned a lot. I really appreciated it. And then towards the end of that 3 months, one of the people who I had reached out to when I first got to the island and asked for a job contacted me and said, "Hey, I've got this position for you. I think you'd be great for it. It comes with a car, but I need you here like now." And I had 2 weeks left of my commitment to the farm. And so I talked to the owner of the farm and I told him what was going on. I said, "Look, I'm not going to leave if you really feel like you need me here, if you don't want me to leave, because I did commit to you first. But I really feel like I'd like to make Hawaii home, and I feel like I need a job." Yes, again, that whole job thing. And this opportunity feels perfect. Like it's exactly my skill set, and it's a lot of money, and there's a car, which, another thing that I thought I needed. And he was like, "Yeah, I get it. I really appreciate you saying and actually talking to me about this, but yeah, go do the thing." And so I did. And I ended up working at this company on Hawaii for about 2 years. And again, ended up just as miserable as I was back in Nashville working the job. I and I'm on Hawaii, and if I'm miserable in Hawaii, then clearly I'm doing something wrong. And again, it just felt like the job. So I quit it, and I ended up doing this kind of 2-month tour of the U.S. with the girl I was dating at the time. And during that 2 months, there was this phrase that I couldn't get out of my head. It was just live on faith, live on faith, live on faith. I had no idea what that meant, but it was inescapable. It was just always there. And so I ended up going back to Hawaii, to the Big Island, this time to the exact opposite side of the island, back to the Puna side. And just trusting that something would come up. I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't have a job. I wasn't going to go looking for a job. But it just so happened that a really good friend of mine had found this property where we could do work trade and a few other things to stay there, and it was super easy. And she had a car at the time. So she ended up coming and pick me up from the airport and invited me to stay back at this place in this kind of like tent structure on Hawaii, and just doing a little work trade there. And that's kind of how it happened for the next, I think it was a year and a half, maybe even another 2 years. Opportunities would just come up when I needed them. And I would bounce around from place to place, staying with my friend a lot. We house sat together, jumped on the house sitting circuit. And that's a lot of how we would say. But also I would just camp occasionally. And most of the time I didn't really need money. Food was constantly there. And the few times that I did need money, an opportunity would come up to make literally exactly what I needed and not a dime more. And then when that money was gone, it was gone. That was it. It was just to buy whatever one thing I needed to buy, or to provide the one thing that I needed at the time, whether that be food or some form of transportation or a plane ticket or whatever. It was just, money was always there. But it was never, ever more than exactly what I needed. And I found that incredibly frustrating. So that was the kind of two experiences that I had. There was the working world, the 40-hour work week, the literally slaving my life away just to survive and not being happy, not being fulfilled. And then there was the kind of hippy dippy, living on faith, relying on other people, just trusting that things would work out. And they did, but that never really felt whole or complete either. I always felt like I wasn't earning what I was getting from the universe. There was this this fear of disappointing everyone else and disappointing myself because I was, just constantly relying on others to provide for me, these angels that would just come into my life. And they were incredibly gracious, every single one of them, because most of them had been right where I was at that time, and they knew what the process was to some degree. But there's still a lot of, not guilt, but just heaviness around that in my life. And so a lot of things happened, and I ended up coming back to the States for a while and go back to Hawaii for a while and just bouncing back and forth. But one of the times when I went back to Hawaii, I ended up on Kauai. Didn't plan on being there. It just worked out that way. And that's another story for another video. But Kauai was really intense for me because everything that I thought I needed was instantly taken away, starting with money. It got to the point where even my tent was gone, my clothes were gone, my bags, my ID, everything. I literally at one point had a sleeping bag, swimming trunks, and a sweater, and a towel, and my phone. That was it. That was all I had. And still, everything worked out. Everything that I absolutely needed was provided, right down to a blue shirt and khaki pants that I needed for a choir concert that I was singing in a couple of days later. It was really that experience, that losing everything and everything still being okay, that really taught me to trust that everything is going to be okay. And it's funny because when I didn't trust and I tried to work things out and I tried to make things happen and I was striving for a job and money, things would still work out, but God, I was miserable. It was an awful experience trying to make things work. But when I let go and just surrendered to, okay, this is happening. So what opportunities are here? Let's take advantage of those. Everything just flowed much more beautifully. And there was this calm and ease and peace and contentment that came with that. And it was fabulous. But again, no money, which is fine. I'm perfectly okay with that. I don't need to make money, and I'm not doing this out of a need to make money. I'm doing this out of an intuition. I'm doing this because this feels like this inexorable pull to do it. There's really no deeper explanation of that. I'll try in another video. But so because I've had those experiences, I'm not really attached to any of this. If this plan to create financial wealth and independence comes to fruition and actually works and grows, that's awesome. I have no idea how I'll spend that money. I trust that intuitively that, I will be able to spend it as it comes along and whatever feels appropriate. And I don't feel like I need it, but it does feel like a wonderful thing to have, like a very useful resource. So that's where I am. That's where I'm jumping forward from. I skipped a lot in there. If you have questions, I'll try and answer them in future videos. And I'm sure more of the story will come out in future videos. But that's the short of it. 15 minutes short, but whatever. um, so the plan going forward, I've made a few commitments to myself. The first and foremost being that I will do one thing every day that either creates value, enhances value, or has the potential to create value. That's the most important thing, it feels like to me, is to get away from this idea of needing a paycheck to survive and moving into creating things of value that in turn create cash flow, that are constantly putting money into my pocket even when I'm not working. So this video is my creating value for today. And it's part of the reason why I'm doing YouTube, because it felt like a really appropriate, beautiful way to, one, share what I've learned with all of you, and two, actually create value. This video could be making me money years from now. Will it? Who knows? That's part of the fun, but it could be. And so this is me feeling that commitment to myself today, is making this video. The second thing is to start investing more. I've already started investing in some things. Primarily, I feel like my first goals are investing in cryptocurrencies. The end goal being to have a minimum of $10,000 invested by the end of 2019. First in cryptos. The ones I'm looking at most are Litecoin, Verge, and Monero, but also Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a few other smaller ones, EOS maybe. And these are things I'm not spending a lot of time researching. I'm looking more at the story behind them, the creators, the idea, the purpose behind them, and does that story feel good to me? Like, that's the most important thing to me, is does that story feel good to me? Is that something that I feel drawn to support? And is it something that I would use in the future? I don't really see cryptocurrency as just an investment. It's actually a currency. It's a way to create contracts. It's a whole other thing. It's a way to move out of the pyramid economy that we live in. So that's first, is building up crypto reserves for whatever future purpose. And then second, moving into stocks, and then third, into maybe real estate. I'd like to start taking some real estate classes and moving into that in the future. So that's commitment number 2. 1 is creating something of value every day. 2 is investing more. Commitment 3 is purchasing the tools that I feel I need when I need them. And actually spending good money on them to buy tools that will last, that will enhance what I can do immediately without hesitating. Like, one of my biggest fears is spending money. There's always this, even through all my experiences, it's still there. And just one quick example. So right now, I've kind of put myself in this interesting place where I've committed to buying a laptop, and I've committed to spending $5,000 on a trip to Egypt. And I got an intuitive yes to doing both. So I'm going to trust that the money is going to show up. The deposit for my trip to Egypt is due yesterday. The laptop is in layaway and needs to be paid off, soon. Because the sooner I get it, the sooner I can actually start doing more of these side hustles and making more money on the side. So I actually posed the question to myself this morning: should I pay the deposit first or pay off the laptop first? And the feeling I got was to pay off the laptop first. So that's what I'm going to do. No hesitation. I'm going to spend that money. I'm going to buy that laptop as soon as I have it. And then I'm going to trust that everything with Egypt will work out, or not. Maybe I'm not going to Egypt, but I feel like I am. So going with it. So those are the 3 commitments create something of value, build investments, spend the money I need to spend without fear. That feels like it's it for this video. I'll go into more about side hustles and some of the things that I'm trying in another video later on. But 20 minutes feels like enough. So thank you for watching. If you really appreciate what's going on and you feel like you're learning from it, feel free to subscribe, like the videos, whatever. I'm still learning the whole YouTube thing, and you do you, I'll do me. But if you doing you means subscribing, thank you. I really appreciate it. Until next time, this has been Be Here with Matthew. Thank you and aloha.